Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It's funny how betrayal doesn't always come with a slammed door or a screaming match. Sometimes it comes with a smile, a light laugh, and a suitcase by the door. It happened on a Wednesday. Ordinary. Forgettable, until it wasn't. She was tossing clothes into a duffel bag, humming to herself, when she casually dropped the line that split my world in two. "I'm just going on a trip with a rich friend," she said. "I want to see what real life feels like." Real life. As if the life we built together, every rent check, every late-night grocery run, every scraped-together weekend, wasn't real enough for her anymore. I stood there, keys in hand, heart somewhere between disbelief and something colder. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't even ask who the friend was. Because deep down, I already knew. Not the name. Not the details. The truth. Some bridges don't burn. They crumble under the weight of betrayal. I watched her zip up her bag, cheerful, oblivious to the silence growing heavier between us. She thought it was harmless. A little getaway. A harmless fantasy she could step into, taste, and come back from. But some choices don't come with return tickets. She leaned in for a quick kiss goodbye, barely brushed my cheek with her lips. Already halfway out the door in her mind. I stood there, feeling the ghost of her touch fade before she even finished the gesture. And I realized. You can't miss someone who's already gone. She didn't even see it happening. Didn't see the way her words cracked the foundation we stood on. Didn't see the way the light dimmed in a house that was once a home. She just smiled, slung the bag over her shoulder, and said, "I'll text you when we land." I nodded, smiled back. Not because I believed her. Not because I was okay. But because at that moment, something inside me shifted. Permanently. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to do something far more terrifying to someone like her. I was going to let her go. And let her feel exactly what real loss tastes like. Not all at once. Not in a dramatic scene. Slowly. Silently. When someone shows you how little they fear losing you. You show them how real that loss can be. And so, with no more words, no more pleas, I watched her walk out the door. The only sound left behind was the soft click of the lock sliding back into place, and the sound of a bridge crumbling into dust. When she walked out the door, I didn't follow. I didn't text her to be safe. I didn't ask for updates. I simply let the silence settle. Some wars aren't fought with words. They're won with absence. The old me, the man who once bent over backwards to make her feel secure, might have asked 100 questions. Who is this friend? Why didn't I know about this trip sooner? Why did it feel like she had been packing her heart away long before she packed that bag? But that man was gone. In his place stood someone quieter, someone colder, someone who understood that begging for loyalty was like trying to hold water in a closed fist. She thought she had permission. She thought my silence was a green light. "Have a good time," I had said, voice steady, almost detached. And she took it. She ran with it. I watched her Instagram light up within hours. Pictures of airport lounges. Champagne in tall, thin glasses. Beach sunsets with captions like "living my best life." And there I was, scrolling through snapshots of a woman I no longer recognized. It's strange, really. Not the betrayal itself. The casualness of it. The ease. As if erasing everything we built was as simple as booking a flight. I didn't comment. I didn't like the photos. I didn't text her. I just closed the app, placed my phone face down on the table, and sat in the silence. She wasn't asking for my permission, but she got it anyway. Because real permission isn't given. It's taken by those willing to pay the price. And she would. Not immediately. Not with fireworks or a final, tear-stained argument. But quietly. In the soft, creeping emptiness that follows after you betray someone who truly, genuinely loved you. The kind of emptiness that money can't fill. The kind of emptiness no sunset selfie can drown out. I didn't know exactly when it would hit her. I just knew it would. Because eventually, when the champagne runs out, and the beach grows cold, and the friends stop answering their phones, there's only one thing left to face. Yourself. And she wouldn't like what she saw. Not after realizing what she traded away for a few days of pretending. Not every punishment needs to be delivered. Some just arrive right on schedule. Meanwhile, I was already making my own silent plans. Not out of revenge. Not out of anger. Out of necessity. Because when someone shows you that you're optional, you start building a life where they're unnecessary. And I was building faster than she could ever imagine. The thing about losing someone isn't that they leave. It's realizing they left long before you noticed. She was still gone, somewhere between a rooftop bar and a beach she couldn't pronounce, posting stories that didn't need me to exist, laughing in pictures that didn't need my presence to feel full. And me? I was learning to live without her, while she still thought I was standing still. You can't miss someone who's already been practicing life without you. The house felt different now. Not heavier. Not sadder. Lighter. Like when you finally put down something you didn't realize had been weighing you down for months. I moved through the rooms differently. No longer tiptoeing around her moods. No longer adjusting my day to fit into hers. It was small at first. I opened the windows wider. Let the cool autumn air fill the spaces she used to dominate with her endless scrolling, her shallow laughter, her absence dressed up as presents. I cooked dinner for one. Ate standing up at the kitchen counter without setting 2 plates, without looking at the clock and wondering when she'd come home. I slept diagonally across the bed, no longer clinging to my side, waiting for a body that wouldn't turn toward me even if it were there. It was freedom. The kind you don't celebrate out loud. The kind you breathe in quietly, deeply, with the knowledge that something old has died, and something new, something better, is about to begin. She thought she had left me behind for a richer life. What she didn't realize is, I was already leaving her behind too. The text messages came, of course. Short. Effortless. Miss you. Wish you were here. You'd love this place. Polite lies disguised as affection. I answered once. A simple, glad you're having fun. And then silence. No anger. No coldness. Just distance. The kind of distance you can't bridge with emojis or late-night drunk texts. The kind of distance that isn't measured in miles. But in moments you can't get back. Every hour she spent smiling in someone else's borrowed fantasy. I spent building something she would never be invited into again. Peace. Self-respect. A life without her shadow hanging over my shoulder. She didn't know it yet, but when she finally came back through that door, suitcase rolling behind her, cheap souvenir in hand, thinking everything was the same, she'd find a stranger standing where her safety net used to be. Some losses don't scream when they happen. They just echo forever after. And the echo had already started. At first, I thought it would hurt more. Watching her smile for an audience that wasn't me. Watching her live a life I wasn't invited to. But it didn't hurt. It clarified. Every picture she posted, champagne glass raised, arms around people I didn't know, sunburned smiles and rented luxury. It made the truth brighter, sharper, impossible to ignore. She wasn't missing me. She was replacing me. The captions told a story louder than any words she could have texted. Manifesting dreams. Living life at a higher frequency. You only get one shot. She wasn't just living without me. She was celebrating it. And somewhere between the staged laughter and sunset selfies, I stopped mourning her. I started erasing her. Quietly. Systematically. No tantrums. No late-night calls. No sad playlists. I opened my phone and moved her photos into a hidden folder I never planned to open again. I muted her updates, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I didn't need a front-row seat to my own replacement. If she wanted a life without me, the least I could do was respect her decision. I changed my lock screen. Deleted the favorites list that still had her name at the top. Started making coffee for one, measuring it carefully, no longer instinctively pouring 2 cups. Each small act felt surgical, precise, clean. This wasn't rage. This wasn't revenge. This was survival. And the more she posted, the less real she became to me. A stranger wearing the face of a woman I used to love. A mirage dissolving in a heat wave of her own creation. One night, scrolling mindlessly, I stumbled onto a video she'd been tagged in. Her, laughing on the bow of a yacht. Champagne spraying into the air. The rich friend, a man, obviously standing too close, smiling too wide. The comments flooded in. Goals. You deserve this life. Get that bag, queen. And there she was, basking in the glow of attention, unaware that the foundation she had traded away for a weekend of applause was already cracking beneath her feet. I didn't watch the whole clip. I didn't need to. I locked my phone, set it face down again, and stared at the ceiling. It was over. Not because she was laughing on someone else's yacht. Not because she looked happier without me. But because in that moment, I finally understood. Love isn't stolen. It's surrendered. And she had surrendered ours without a second thought. The beautiful thing about silence is that it doesn't ask for closure. It doesn't demand an apology. It simply moves on. Quietly, permanently. And that's exactly what I was doing. She just hadn't noticed yet. But she would. And by then, I'd be too far gone for her to reach. The funny thing about starting over is that it doesn't require grand gestures. No bonfires of old memories. No screaming matches. Just small decisions. Tiny shifts in gravity that, over time, move entire worlds. It started with the couch. One morning, I dragged it across the living room, not because it needed moving, but because I needed to feel the space differently. To claim it again. Then the photos came down. The ones that once seemed permanent fixtures. Her smiling by the lake, her clinging to my arm at a wedding, her laughing in some sun-drenched moment that now felt embarrassingly distant. I didn't smash them. I didn't cry over them. I wrapped them in newspaper, packed them neatly into a box, taped it shut. Goodbye doesn't have to be loud to be final. Next came the closet. Her side of it still hung heavy with clothes, dresses she'd bought for parties she went to without me, shoes she left scattered like breadcrumbs leading to someone else's life. Piece by piece, I gathered them, folded them, packed them, not out of anger, but because they no longer belonged to the man I was becoming. Each item I removed made the air lighter, the walls straighter, the house quieter in a way that felt clean. I even replaced the bedding. Simple, gray, nothing fancy. But it was mine. Mine alone. No traces of perfume in the pillowcases. No ghostly impressions on the mattress. Just space. Breathable, honest space. You don't realize how much of yourself you've surrendered until you start taking it back. I didn't announce these changes. Didn't post about them. Didn't warn her. Because they weren't for her. They were for me. This wasn't revenge. It was resurrection. I wasn't burning the house down. I was airing it out. Letting the stale, bitter remnants of a love she had already abandoned drift out through open windows. I even made small repairs I had been putting off for months. The loose cabinet hinge, the squeaky bedroom door, the cracked tile in the bathroom. Each fix felt symbolic. A silent vow to myself. No one else is coming to save you. You save yourself. By the time I finished, the house didn't look dramatically different. But it felt different. It felt honest. It felt light. It felt like mine. She had taken herself out of the picture. I was just adjusting the frame. And somewhere out there, on some beach, wrapped in luxury that wasn't hers, she was smiling at a camera, completely unaware that the man who once built a home for her was now building something she would never be welcome in again. She came back on a Sunday, late afternoon, suitcase rolling behind her, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She looked lighter, as if the ocean air had rinsed her clean of the life she left behind for a week. She didn't announce herself with a dramatic entrance. No excited squeals or running into my arms. Just a casual call into the house. Hey, I'm home. Home. The words sounded foreign in her mouth, a language she hadn't spoken in a long time. I stood in the kitchen, drying a coffee mug, calm as a still pond, the same way I had been every day since she left. She sauntered in, all energy and brightness, holding a shopping bag in one hand. Bet you something, she said, tossing it onto the counter like a favor. Inside was a cheap T-shirt. Thin fabric, touristy print. Big, bold letters across the chest. Dream big. I held it up for a second, the fabric fluttering in the air between us. Then I smiled. Not warmly. Not cruelly. Just peacefully. I already am, I said. Her face faltered, just for a split second. The first real crack in her perfect, vacation-glazed armor. She recovered quickly, of course. Started telling me about the trip. The yacht. The rooftop dinners. The champagne at noon. Names of people I'd never heard before spilled out of her like a confession she didn't realize she was making. People who had seen her smile more in 7 days than I had seen her smile in the last 7 months. I nodded where it felt polite to nod. I smiled where it felt appropriate to smile. But inside, I wasn't listening. Not really. Because something had shifted. Not in her. In me. You can't build a life with someone who's already practicing life without you. That night, she unpacked in the bedroom like everything was normal. Dropped her sandals on the floor. Hung up a new dress she'd bought for some future occasion. I lay on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone, but really just breathing. Breathing in a house that no longer smelled like her. Breathing in a future that no longer depended on her choices. She didn't notice the new bedding. Didn't notice the missing photos. Didn't notice that the house was no longer arranged around her comfort. Or maybe she did, but she didn't know how to ask the questions that mattered. So she talked about sunsets and cocktails instead. Real loss doesn't hit like a hammer. It sinks in like cold water, inch by inch, until you're shivering and don't know why. And she had just taken her first step into the freezing. Drift doesn't happen with one giant step. It happens one invisible inch at a time. At first, she didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she noticed, and just didn't want to believe it. I woke up earlier, went to bed later, spent more time in the garage, the gym, the coffee shop around the corner. Anywhere but under the same roof, she had tried to decorate with cheap souvenirs and forced smiles. We were two bodies orbiting the same empty house, pretending the gravity still held. But gravity only works when both sides pull equally. And I wasn't pulling anymore. She asked questions, now and then. Little ones, harmless on the surface. You're working late again? Heading out so early? You're quiet lately. I answered without weight. Without anger. Yeah. Needed some air. Just thinking. Short sentences. No bridges offered. She filled the silence with noise, talking about new TV shows, new recipes, a new class she was thinking about taking. I nodded. I smiled. I let the words pass over me like rain on glass. Because the real conversation had already ended the moment she chose another life over the one we had built. Now there was just paperwork left. Emotional signatures neither of us wanted to acknowledge yet. One night, she suggested we go out for dinner. Her voice too bright, too rehearsed. It's been a while, she said. We should do something, just us. I agreed. Why not? I let her pick the restaurant, someplace trendy, loud enough to muffle the awkward silences. She dressed up, tried harder than she had in months. I noticed. I just didn't care. Over the overpriced appetizers, she laughed a little too loudly, leaned across the table a little too eagerly. But the spark that once lived between us was gone, extinguished by her own hand. And no amount of flirting could reignite it. You can't rebuild a bridge after you've set fire to both ends. On the drive home, she reached for my hand. A small, trembling gesture. Fingers brushing mine in the dark, searching for a connection she had assumed would always be there. I let my hand rest on the gear shift instead. Not a slap, not a rejection, just neutrality. And the weight of that choice crushed louder than any shouted argument could have. She pulled her hand back slowly, looked out the window, said nothing, and neither did I. Because some silences aren't meant to be filled. Some silences are answers in themselves. We pulled into the driveway. She went inside first. Didn't wait for me. I sat in the car for a moment longer, listening to the engine tick as it cooled, feeling the last remnants of what we once had dissipate into the night. It was over. Not officially. Not legally. But spiritually. And soon, I would make it official too. Because love doesn't survive on borrowed time. And she had spent every last second we had. Leaving doesn't always come with slammed doors or shouting matches. Sometimes it comes quietly, like the tide pulling away from the shore. I started packing on a Wednesday morning. Not everything. Just enough. The things that mattered. The things that still felt like mine. It was mechanical. Efficient. Sweaters folded neatly into a duffel bag. Books tucked carefully into a small box. A few old photographs, the ones from before her, slipped between the pages like bookmarks from another life. She was at work, laughing over coffee with people who didn't know, or didn't care, that she was living on borrowed time. Goodbyes don't always echo. Sometimes they hum, low and certain, like a door clicking shut forever. I didn't leave a mess. Didn't destroy anything. Didn't take petty revenge. I just removed myself, piece by piece, breath by breath. By the time the sun dipped low and the house filled with that familiar blue-gray light, I was ready. I stood in the middle of the living room for a long moment, looking at the space we once called ours. It didn't feel like a battlefield. It didn't feel like a graveyard. It felt like an empty stage after the final curtain falls. The audience long gone, the actors unmasked, the illusion over. On the coffee table, I left a simple white envelope. No frills, no dramatic handwriting. Inside was a note, short and sharp. Real life isn't a place you visit. It's something you build. And you just burned it. No signature. No PS. No plea for her to chase after me. Because that was the point. When you make someone optional, you forfeit the right to demand their loyalty. I closed the door behind me with the same calm finality as someone pulling a sheet over a finished painting. No rage. No grief. Just peace. It was startling. How easy it was to leave once the decision was made. How light my body felt walking away from everything I thought I couldn't live without. How little the weight of lost promises mattered when compared to the freedom of self-respect. She would come home to an echo, a shell of a life she once took for granted. She would find the envelope. She would read the words. And maybe, just maybe, she would realize that the real loss wasn't sudden. It had been happening for months, years, silent, slow, irreversible. Love doesn't die with a scream. It dies with a whisper. And in that whisper, I had already found my freedom. It didn't happen all at once. Real collapse never does. At first, it was small things. A missed call here. A text left on read there. The friend she toasted champagne with didn't answer as quickly anymore. The rich friend who promised the world stopped inviting her to the party once the novelty wore off. No more rooftop photos. No more beach selfies. Just quiet. The same quiet she had gifted me months ago. Now returned to her, twice as heavy. The silence she chose became the silence that devoured her. I heard about it through the cracks. Mutual friends. The kind of casual updates that slip into conversation when people don't know they're delivering postmortem reports. She's been different lately. I think she and that guy aren't talking anymore. She's been spending a lot of time alone. I didn't ask for details. Didn't need them. Because I knew how it felt. The walls closing in. The brightness dimming. The cold setting in where warmth used to live. One night, I caught her name pop up on my phone. A message from a number I hadn't blocked, but no longer cared to answer. Hope you're doing okay. I miss talking to you. Maybe we can catch up sometime? I read them in silence. No anger. No bitterness. Just the detached compassion you feel for someone you used to know. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because there was nothing left to say. She had made her choice. And so had I. You can't ask someone to build a life with you after you've shown them they're replaceable. I imagined her sitting in that house, now colder and emptier than when I left. The photos missing from the walls. The bed feeling too big. The silence pressing against her like a second skin. She had wanted more. More excitement. More luxury. More stories to post. And now she had it. All of it. Except now, there was no one to celebrate with. No one to hold her when the filters faded and the world grew quiet. She thought more meant better. She didn't realize more can also mean emptier. The collapse wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. It was slow. Inevitable. A hollowing out that started the moment she mistook temporary thrills for real life. And by the time she realized the foundation was gone, by the time she understood that real life isn't bought, or borrowed, or captured in curated moments, there was nothing left to rebuild from. Just ashes. And echoes. And an inbox full of messages that would never get a reply. People think loss happens when someone walks away. They're wrong. Loss happens in the quiet. In the slow erosion of trust. In the thousand small decisions that say, you're not enough. She thought real life was champagne glasses and sunsets. Thought it was yachts and rooftop parties. Thought it was about who could show her a brighter, flashier version of happiness. And maybe, for a moment, it was. But real life isn't a weekend getaway. It isn't a carefully posed photo. Real life is who stands beside you when the lights go out. When the party ends. When the roof leaks. When the bank account runs low. When you're not shining and someone still chooses you, every day, without cameras rolling. She thought she could dip her toes into a richer world and come home to a man who would wait. Patient. Silent. Grateful. She didn't realize that bridges aren't guaranteed. That some doors lock permanently after you walk away. Love isn't an ATM. It doesn't just reload when you're ready for more. By the time she realized what she had lost, the house was empty. The key didn't fit. The texts went unanswered. Not out of cruelty. Not out of revenge. Out of truth. Because the love she once had, the steady, solid, stubborn love that would have stayed through storms and droughts, wasn't hers anymore. It had moved on. Grown roots somewhere else. Somewhere she would never be invited to again. She traded a lifetime for a weekend. A home for a hotel room. A partner for an audience. And when the lights faded and the applause stopped, she was left with what she chose. Silence. Emptiness. And a t-shirt that said "Dream Big" in a house that no longer dreamed of her. She thought real life was about chasing more. She learned it's about keeping what matters when more is no longer enough. And me? I didn't burn down the past. I didn't curse her name. I just left it all behind and walked into a future where love wasn't begged for, where loyalty wasn't a transaction, where real life was built, not borrowed. And every step I took away from her was a step towards something she would never touch again. Peace. Been through it. When they crossed a line, and you made sure they felt it.